But you're going to notice that when you have something that you want to live for, life is really, really short, man. People who love what they do, they wear themselves out doing it. When you find yourself with a passion, something that you love, there's not enough hours in the day for it. When you find yourself actually genuinely, deeply in love with someone, there's not enough time in the day to spend with them. Now that becomes another tragedy of life. You've got a person you want to spend all your time with, and you have a thing that you want to spend, an activity that you want to spend all your time doing. And now you have to start to carve out that time, figure out which is more important, and make those kinds of decisions. The problem with life is not that there's nothing to do. The problem with life is that there's too much to do. And when you discover it, you fall in love with it, now clocks matter. Now 24 hours matters. And that's a strange thing, because that's when all of a sudden 8 hours of sleep starts to matter too. One day I'll be old, dead, and forgotten. Anybody disagree with that? Anybody remember her? Okay, so she's right. One day she will be old. She was born in 1908, so she's old in 2023. Well, if she was alive, she'd be old, but she's not, because she is dead, just as she predicted. And we don't know who she is, so she's forgotten. So her prediction was correct. This is part of the tragedy of life. When you understand that no matter how long you live, it's still a really short life, man. You know, if you live to be 100 years old, do you have any idea how old your great-grandmother lived to be?
Like 88.
88? That's not bad, man. That's not bad at all. I know that my great-grandmother, she lived to be close to 100, and I'm sure some of you guys have relatives who have done that, lived quite a number of years. And yet, no matter how long it is, it's never quite enough. How old were you when she passed away? How long ago was this?
It was like in 6th grade.
6th grade, so way back in the day, like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 4 years ago. So think about this. If it's you, how many generations do you want to see? So if you guys want to have children, obviously you want to see your children, right? Grow up. You guys want to see your grandchildren?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys want to see your great-grandchildren?
They're okay.
No, I'm asking if you want to. Not if you're likely to. Do you want to?
Yes.
Would you want to see it? Okay. You guys want to see your great-great-grandchildren?
Yeah.
Huh. So how far down does this go that you want to see your descendants?
Until you die.
Well, no, but the idea is that imagine if you could live as long as you want to live.
Oh.
80 generations? Great. I don't know. I wonder, because I wonder if there's ever a line where you finally say, that's enough. I don't want to see my great-great-great-grandchildren. They won't even look like me. They probably have weird hair and dress funny. And that's the point, is that there never really is a line that we draw and we say, that's enough. And I hear people say all the time things like, man, I wouldn't want to live, to be 100, man. I don't want to live that long. Who wants to live forever? Does anybody here really like football a lot? Anybody here really like soccer a lot? Oh, you admit it, okay. So those of you guys who like soccer, do you want to see who wins the year 2800 World Cup? Kind of, it'd be interesting, right, to see who wins it. In other words, if there's something that you love a lot, I mean, anybody want to see where technology goes next?
Yeah.
Anybody want to see if we finally get those flying cars? Yeah. So that's the thing, is that we might say these things like, man, I don't want to live forever. But do you want to see flying cars? Yeah. Do you want to see if we ever develop the ability to travel to other planets and other solar systems, other galaxies? Yeah. But I don't want to live too long. Bullshit. Of course we want to live long, because it's not just the life that we want to live, it's because we want to have lots and lots of experiences. We want to see those things. And that's the real tragedy of life. It's that our life gets cut off, and there's always something tomorrow. Like, I always have this idea in my head that, like, I don't want to get cancer or something like that. And cancer is just a weird thing in itself. It's kind of like diabetes. You ever think about that? If you guys have family members who have diabetes, think about that. Like, my dad had it. And he got it because he worked at McDonald's his whole life. He was always eating cheeseburgers from McDonald's. of course, didn't go to Burger King. Stupid thing to say. That means that at some point in his life, there was one cheeseburger that if he had put it down and said, no more cheeseburgers, he wouldn't have gotten diabetes. But there has to have been one that he finally went home and he crossed that threshold of getting diabetes. That's a trip. It's like if you have, like a friend of mine died, she died last year, and she died from liver damage. She drank a lot, man. She was young, dude. She was in her late 20s. It was really sad. She competed like beauty pageants and stuff like that. But she drank herself quite literally. She destroyed her liver. She destroyed her kidneys as well. Too much alcohol. At some point, and she did it because there wasn't a lot of life for her to live. She thought. But then her life turned around one day, and she decided that she really wanted to live. She got into a wonderful relationship. Life was turning around. 4 years later, she found out that the disease was from years ago. She had had it for a few years now. So when she finally decided to turn her life around, and really had turned her life around, she found out that she was dying. That means at some point, she took one drink that was too much. If she had just not taken that one drink, you know? I think about that with myself, like, it's going to be terrible if like I die like on a Tuesday of cancer or whatever, and Wednesday they announce, we have a cure for cancer. It'll be rolled out to everybody by Thursday. And you're sitting there like, you know, you're on your deathbed and you're watching the news and that's what you see and you're like, seriously? And one day late? You know, I want to see who wins that World Series. I want to see if we get flying cars. I want to see if robots really are going to be able to cook me breakfast someday. And so no matter how long you live, there's always the next thing that you could miss out on. That's the real tragedy of life. It isn't that there's nothing to do, it's that there's so much to do, and that there's so much in the future. I mean, if you really think about it, human history, we've only encountered a very small sliver. If we don't screw it up, there's a whole lot of human history ahead of us. I'm really interested to see how things turn out. You know? So it's a tragedy. One day I'll be dead and forgotten, and you'll never know. Think about that. Our historical figures never got to fly on planes. So, how long is she going to live? How long is she going to live? Not long enough. Not long enough to do all the things that she wants to do. Like all of us. Like all of us. That's a tragedy, man. And then you got this other guy. I'll give him a hat so we know what he's doing. And he's in a hotel room, and he's looking around in a dingy hotel room. So we talked a little bit at the beginning. What's the suggestion about him being in a dingy hotel room? What's it? What's that?
His life sucks.
His life sucks. And how long is it going to be like that? Forever. So she's sitting there thinking, man, one day I'm going to be dead and forgotten. And that only really bothers you if you feel like you've got something to live for. So you got to read between the lines here. She feels like she has something to live for. She really wants to be remembered. She really wants to live a long time, but she recognizes this tragedy, that she's going to be old, dead, and forgotten. And by the way, in that order. So when she's writing this, she's not old yet, but she's also fearing oldness. And that's why age bothers people so much. It isn't just because people say, oh, once you get to be a certain age, everything starts to hurt. It's like, I hope so. I hope so. I hope you've lived in such a way that you have a lot of scars, so that you have a lot of stories in your life. But she fears that. That she fears the oldness. Why? Because what happens right after you get old? For most people, you're gone. You die. Oldness is a way of letting you know that you're on the way. It's just like at some point, I know this is already kind of happening, but at some point, a lot of the musicians that you guys look up to, when you get older, they're going to die. And I don't just mean like they're going to die of an overdose or something like that. They're going to die of like, skin cancer and, stuff like that. And you're going to sit there and go like, my gosh, how can they possibly get skin cancer? I mean, how old are they? And then you're going to read, they're like, 61 years old. And you're going to be like, 61 years old? But I was just listening to them when, oh no, I'm in my 50s. What? I'm not, but you know what I'm saying. Don't get any ideas. You know what that means? If they're dying, what does that mean is going to happen soon? You're going to die soon too, because your musicians are only about 10 years ahead of you guys. So when your musicians start dying of old age diseases, that means that you're next on the queue. You're coming up next. And it's a reminder, because when we're younger, those musicians, they remind us of so many good times, so many parties, so many friends, so many laughs, so many conversations. And so when they start dying off, so does the thing that got us through so many of those days. Because music is one of those things that gets you through the tragedies of life. You know? Music is like, it's like fiber for all the shit that's balled up in your soul, you know? So you should take a lot of it, because it's the thing that helps you to feel human. Because without music, life would be a mistake. And so when your musicians start dying off, that means it represents something. That youth, those old times, they start dying off. And then you get to an age and you realize, shoot, I'm next. And then you realize life is not forever. And then, if you're lucky, your friends start dying off. Not you, but your friends. Because your idols die off, and your friends die off. Your family starts dying off. And that big payoff of living to be 88 years old, living to be 100 years old, is that it's just you. Except you're no longer under that misimpression that you will always be here. You know that the line is getting shorter, and you're getting closer to the end, and you've got your ticket. And you might be the last one. You might be the winner of all of your friends and family. But the reward, the payoff, is that now you're alone. And so, I don't know. Maybe they've established something good on the other side. Maybe you'll be walking into a good party. Or maybe you're walking into nothing. I guess we'll find out, won't we? But you're going to notice that when you have something that you want to live for, life is really, really short, man. You know, people who love what they do, they wear themselves out doing it. When you find yourself with a passion, something that you love, there's not enough hours in the day for it. When you find yourself actually genuinely, deeply in love with someone, there's not enough time in the day to spend with them. Now that becomes another tragedy of life. You've got a person you want to spend all your time with, and you have a thing that you want to spend, an activity that you want to spend all your time doing. And now you have to start to carve out that time and figure out which is more important and make those kinds of decisions. The problem with life is not that there's nothing to do. The problem with life is that there's too much to do. And when you discover it and you fall in love with it, now clocks matter. Now 24 hours matters. And that's a strange thing, because that's when all of a sudden 8 hours of sleep starts to matter too. And so when you're there your whole life and you're worried about this death thing approaching, it feels like it's going to happen. You know, you're kind of afraid of what's going to happen. This guy who's stuck in a dingy hotel room, he's in a bad part of time, it's a bad part of life, he thinks it's going to be forever. Do you ever have good times in life and you say, it's always going to be like this?
No.
You ever have those bad times in life and you're like, man, it's never going to improve? You ever have a headache? Anybody here get migraines? You get headaches and then you think back to a time in your life when you didn't have a headache. Oh, yesterday afternoon I didn't have a headache. I took it for granted. I should have appreciated not having a headache. For some reason when we go through these negative times, we seem to think that they're always going to be bad. Right now some of you are just going through, I don't know, a dark life. Much less a dark period, but you know, it'll turn around. You're probably thinking it'll always be like this. Well, yeah, with that attitude. But what can the guy do? He can leave the dingy hotel room, walk outside, he might see a sky, he might see some opportunity, because the meaning of his life, the purpose of his life is not in that hotel room. I promise you that. Just like the meaning of your life is not in your bedroom. If it was, you'd have found it by now. It certainly isn't in your bed. The meaning and purpose of your life is not to be found in your warm bed in the morning. Because if it was, you'd have found it by now. The meaning and purpose of your life is, I was going to say something silly, like it's not in this classroom. Of course it's in this classroom. But it's probably not in your classrooms, because otherwise you may have found it by now. But maybe you can learn something in your classrooms that will help you find the meaning and purpose of your life, God willing. Or maybe you'll just learn some chemistry, have some fun with it. Who knows? But the longer you stay in that dingy hotel room, and the more you bury yourself under those ideas that it's always going to be like this, the less likely you are to ever emerge. Just understand that when you do, you're going to remember all the time you wasted in that hotel room, and you're going to think, there's not enough time to do all the things I want to do in life. And that's true. And that's true. So I guess the moral of the story is you better get to it, man. You better start finding out what it is, because you're not getting more time to do it. You're only losing time. So find out what it is. find out what it is and get at it. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday? Maybe? No? Okay. Hey man, there's always Wednesday.